Hello everyone, hope you are all doing well today, and thank you for joining us for Ask the Expert, how database transformation accelerates your business journey. We are going to wait a couple of minutes before getting started to allow everyone who has signed up time to join. So please stay online and we'll be kicking off shortly.
Hey Kevin, how are you today?
Very good, Hervé. Very excited for this event. So
Yes,
looking forward to it.
We have a lot of people.
We do indeed. We have a lot of people register, and I hope everyone will turn up. It's
Looks
a great.
Looks like it's a hot topic. What is it we do with
definitely
Postgres, right?
Definitely, that's what we're seeing, right? I think this is a thing that people want to listen. And from your experience, what is going on in the IT market?
Yes, yeah, I'll be happy to do that. And I want to make sure that people ask questions.
Definitely.
I want to make sure that this is for people who attend and we're able. So please, for the people who already joined, do not hesitate to put your question in the Slack. Sophie and Alice will pick them up and make sure we address them.
Yeah.
That would be helpful to make sure we make it relevant for you.
Yeah, we also have a panelist. Ed is going to help out some of the questionnaires during the session while we're talking.
He has a nice picture. I can see he's on.
Yeah, still on vacation. My goodness, he has to change it.
Ed, are you still on vacation or what?
Hi everyone. We are ready to begin. So thank you again for joining our Ask the Expert today. My name is Sophie. I work in the marketing team here at EDB. And I'm just going to run through a bit of housekeeping before handing over to Kevin Lee, who is our sales engineer director in EMEA, and is going to be your host today. The first point to make you aware of is that we are recording, and we'll be sharing the recording alongside the slides after the webinar. And secondly, the lines are muted. So if you have a question, please send via the Q&A question panel, and our experts will be answering this throughout the session. We do have a prize on offer like usual for the best question. So please ask away in the Q&A panel, and any questions we don't have time to answer within the hour, we will aim to follow up with afterwards. And that's all for me. So now I will hand you over to Kevin.
Thank you, Sophie. Thank you everyone for joining. Good morning, good afternoon to you all. I have the pleasure from Hervé, our MD and VP EMEA sales leader, to join us. Today's topic, Ask the Expert, is how database transformation accelerate your business journey. So let me just do a kickoff. So my name is Kevin Lee. I lead the sales engineer team in EMEA. I have the pleasure to have Hervé Timsit joining us. He's the general manager and VP for EMEA in EDB. So just quick share the agenda. So today we're going to talk about how database management challenges and how are we solving some of those challenges during the discussion. And we're seeing a lot of the movement in terms of open source, how that open source impacting into the IT market, and how does that reflect to the business transformation, certainly digital transformation. Many of our customers and prospects are looking for that journey. And how does that Postgres compare to some other relational databases or a non-relational database in the market? And importantly, we're going to walk through some examples about what are the benefits that brings you to the business, and as well as IT management and developers about open source and Postgres. And there are some real life case studies that we're going to share during the call. So as we started, if you have any question, please use the Q&A to type in your questions, and we will have Ed Ballmer is part of the panelist expert, could also pick up some of the question, and we can also answer some of the questions during this session. For those people who are putting interesting questions, we will reward a 25 euros gift card to the best question during the session. So let's kick off. Welcome, Hervé, to this Ask the Expert. This is the 6th series we have this year. If you don't mind, tell us about yourself, your experience about open source and the IT market.
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, I'm super grateful to be here, and I'm really happy that we have so many people attending the webinar, even if I'm not a technical expert, right? Right. So I'm gonna not disclose any new, super techie things because that's not me. But I'm really happy that this topic has some interest from the community and from our customers and from our prospects. So yeah, funnily. I've been in enterprise software all my life, Kevin, all my life. And when the open source movement started at the middle of my career, I was very curious about it. I look at that as someone who's been dealing with enterprise license and perpetual license and then subscription and looking at how open source was moving inside the enterprise was fascinating for me. And I was lucky enough to be part of the story a couple of years ago, and I have been extremely interested and on how we were delivering value with open source, right? As we all know, open source is not free, right? But open source is a much more efficient way to get value for the money that our customers are investing.
Okay.
So, that's me. I'm as you can guess from my accent, I'm French. I'm based in Paris. I'm running the EMEA team, who's about 70 people of customer facing for our customers. And I'm extremely proud to be at EDB, who's I think is one of the most influential company in changing the IT landscape and the software landscape.
That's great. Thank you for the quick intro. So talking about the open source, we also talked about why open source, what is going on with open source. And we did some digging, right? And this graphic, if you don't mind, can you walk us through about what is going on, open source versus some commercial license in the IT market?
Yeah, I think, look, so what we see is that the open source in database, but not only in database, right, has grown dramatically, and as well as the commercial license has declined dramatically. So all the investments now from a database perspective are made with open source technology and not with what we call commercial or proprietary technology. And there's a number of reasons for that, right? I would say one of the reasons is a pure financial reason, right? If you look at IT budgets, the vast majority of IT budgets, probably 80%, is used just to keep the lights on.
Yeah.
Right. There's no innovation. There's nothing of new value with the vast majority of the IT budget. It's done just to keep the servers on, the backup on, the license working on, and all those things. And the amount of money available for talent, innovation, and value, new value to the business is very small. So the first reason is when you free up some of this capital and you stop spending it on things which you can replace with others which are way cheaper, then already the company gets value out of it, right? That's one thing which is happening. The other thing which is happening is that if you want to innovate, you're not going to innovate with the same old technologies you have, right? It's like, it's like if you're running a train with coal, there's no way you can go further than what this train can do. At one point, you're going to have to change technology if you want to innovate new things. And I think people have found in open source database license a way to unleash innovation and get out of some of the structure they were prisoner of with I would say traditional application.
No, great. And I think definitely not only us and many IT company and our customers seeing the changes and changing the strategy in terms of open source. So let's have a poll to ask the audience, what are the most beneficial for the companies to adopt open source? What do you think, the audience? Can we put up the poll, please, Sophie?
It's done.
Is it on? Okay.
Yes.
I think I don't see it, but Can you share with us what the results are? Because I don't see it, Sophie.
Okay, so it's a free software, 28%.
Okay.
Freedom of choice, 32%. Innovation, 40%.
Oh wow, innovation! I'm surprised that many people are choosing innovation versus free software, because in the market we're seeing a lot of people saying, "Hey, open source is for free." But I'm glad that a lot of people recognize innovation is part of that journey. So,
and it's funny, Kevin, because when I meet prospects and customers and we discuss on why they're considering of going further with us, with EDB, and you can think, oh, I want to go further because you have this beautiful mission critical infrastructure that gives me 5-node availability, or you have this Oracle compatibility layer that makes it easier. There's none of those reasons which are spoken about. When I talk with head of operations, CIOs, CTOs, the number one that comes from is, I want to be able to unlock innovation. And I can't unlock innovation with my traditional database, because it's not people who's been doing the same thing for the past 20 years that's going to have new ideas, right? And if I have, those technology, I can have people from different background, from different, history, that are going to start thinking about new things. The other thing that the number two things that comes when people talk about why they go to open source is talent, and talent development, talent attraction, and talent retention. At the end of the day, most of our business are people business, right? We build IP, and if we have great people with great ability to innovate and great infrastructure to innovate, then we're having an impact in the companies we work for. Yeah. If we don't have the tools, then we're not going to attract any new talent, we're not going to invent anything, and we will be outpaced by the competition. So these two things comes, many times, and it's not like the very technical thing that matters, but it's more the broad capabilities of allowing people to innovate and being in a place where they can innovate, as well as having the ability to.
That makes sense. So moving to the open source, to switching gear to Postgres. Why Postgres, Hervé? What do you see?
So, the database theme is kind of an interesting theme for someone like me who's been in IT since the 80s. You could think database, is done, like it is what it is. But I actually, database is the most important thing. Like every application we use every day, whether it's on your phone, on your PC, runs on a database, every one of them. And most of them runs on a relational database. So, the number one thing, which is interesting with database, is that this is one of the most important layers of your IT stack. And then when you look at the database market, I'm not going to give too much names, but you have, I would say, the group of the traditional database software vendors, which we will see a graphic a bit later, which is declining, steadily declining. Now, whether it's, Oracle, Microsoft, you name it.
So let's switch on that, since you're talking about it.
Yeah, so you could see on the top, this line, those are the groups of the traditional database, Oracle, MySQL, Microsoft Server, they're declining. Then you have a group at the bottom of a lot of new things, which has taken some space, but which are pretty stable, right? They're not moving too much. You can have, MariaDB, who's growing, but actually it's growing because it's replacing MySQL. And then the only one who's growing is Postgres. The orange line, this is the only database which is growing way faster than the others. And then, you can come back then to the previous slide, Kevin. So then when we wonder why is that? Well, because it's the only database that has the scalability, the breadth, the ability to grow, to scale in a modern way, and whether it's GIS innovation, whether it's Kubernetes enablement, whether it's, you know, mission critical application, whether it's very large volumes. There's not many databases which are able to do that, but able to continue to innovate with that. Now, coming back to your slide, you know, there's a portion which is important, which is how you run your software and what customer experience you give with your software, because you have a database with all those qualities and you're able to deliver a great experience to your customer. But then there's the other part of it, which you mentioned, which is all those data you're creating and storing has an immense value. And this data needs to be put in a position where you can leverage them, you can use them, you can develop them, you can continue to use them. You don't want to have a data lake of aggregated data where you already made a judgment on, you know, how you condense them. You want to have the real data that you can run all the models you want again and again in order to leverage their value. Yeah. And I think that's an incredible economic advantage, as you say.
Yeah. So, you know, I encourage people to ask questions. We have a question from the audience. Is it safe to put data on open source?
So I think it's safer to put data on open source.
Yeah.
Right? Because, you know, because if you put data in a database where you don't understand, you don't know the code which is written, you don't know who writes it, you don't know what they're going to change, well, it's much safer to put it in a database where actually you can read the code, you know who's impacting it, who's going to make the changes. You know, I remember a couple of years ago, I was discussing with a customer in the pharma industry. And in the pharma industry, there's some very specific requirements in terms of application database. I don't remember exactly the years, but I think they had to keep the application working for 20 years. So it's not just accessing the data. So if they had an application who was doing something in the pharma industry, then this application should be able to rerun 20 years later, right? So they were using VMs and those kind of things. You know, to be prisoner, and they had a lot of challenges because some of those VM were becoming obsolete, and the hypervisor who was using the VM was becoming obsolete. And then they were afraid of losing the ability to be compliant in running those applications 20 years later. When we talk about data, it's much safer because actually you're sure that with an open source technology, you're going to be able to run that and look at that no matter what, which is not the case with commercial database.
Yeah, that's great. Appreciate it. And talking about, you know, you mentioned about the Postgres is one of the fastest growing and one of the database loved by developers and also developer community as well. So just a quick question on this, right? Why is this happening? I mean, all of a sudden, you know, we talked about a lot of those database developers. They used to go to Oracle, IBM, Microsoft, and they go to the cloud, Amazon, etc. Well, why is this transformation to open source and Postgres happening?
Well, first, I think, Kevin, the technology we live in is completely different, right? You know, a couple of years ago, we were talking about SO architecture, you know, which was a very new word where we started to have applications talk to each other. But that's a new world we live in today, you know, with people that come from university and have a very fresh way at looking at how we build application. We have now, you know, the internet and Kubernetes is part of the normal, right? Where when we build new application, we make sure we build them cloud native. We make sure they are born in the cloud. And all those shifts make it such, you know, you need a database who's able to do that. And you need a database where, A, you're going to find talent, B, where people are willing to invest their time because they know there's going to be a career around that. Where you're going to put on those database all those things you know you need now to develop modern application, where you're not going to be locked with some old tools that you can't do anything with. So, you know, people find that with Postgres and with us.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Like the flexibility, modernization, cost saving.
Here you put run anywhere, right? In your slide is run anywhere. So when I talk with CIOs, you know, one of the things that matters to them is what they call predictability of cost, right? What they want to make sure of is that if they spend 100 on something, then next year they do not have a surprise. It's like 300, or because either something happened in the workload, or because they went to the cloud, right? Or because they put some of the workload in Kubernetes. I don't know.
Yeah.
They want to have predictability of spend, and that's critical for them because they are driving their investment. And if they have to find 200 new next year, it's going to be at the expense of something else, and maybe they can't even do it. So one of the beauty of Postgres and EDB is that we run anywhere. Not only we run anywhere in terms of platform, Windows, Linux, all those things, but we run anywhere in the sense we run on-prem, we run on the cloud, we run on hybrid modes, we run on Kubernetes, we run on, and with the same predictive spend. So
right.
Customer can invest with us, and there's not going to be surprised if they decide to change operating model or infrastructure because of their business needs. There's not going to be an impact in their budget, and that's a very important outcome of the Red Anywhere.
So with all this great stuff, right? So all the innovation, all the flexibility, how come the customers that we talked all this about a range of different use cases? What stopped the customers now transforming to open source and Postgres? Well,
I think first, people, humans don't like change. We have that limbic brain in our brains, that make the decision. We have the cortex who analyze all the complex decision, and at the end of the day, we go to the limbic brain and we say, hey, do we do this or not? And the limbic brain, whose only job is survival, is going to look at change as a risk every time, right? And the only reason the limbic brain is going to say, okay, we do a change, is because it's safer to do the change. So if you have something running with a vendor and with a technology for 10 years, why would you change?
Yeah.
If it's already in the budget and you're already spending 50% of your money on it, but it's in the budget, why would you change? Right? It doesn't hurt anyone. It's already in the budget. We don't have to change anything. We're not taking any risk. So people have a hard time to do the change. So they need someone's going to have to step up, say, hold on a minute. I want to get back all this budget for innovation. And yes, I'm going to do some work in order to move this application. Actually, to your point, Kevin, it's easier to do it with us because we're going to offer, for example, for Oracle, we're going to offer immediately compatibility, so you don't have to rewrite the application. So we're removing some of the risk. But I think the resistance is really because people don't like change. So it's our job, as a company, as a community, to show people how we do mitigate those change and deliver benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a crucial part, because people, when they change, some people, they don't know where to start. What are the benefits? They also need to convince their internal stakeholders too, right? The change doesn't mean that it will cost nothing. They have to invest. So I think this is a thing that they're looking for. I think this is also something that I like to ask the audience. What are the most challenges that they are adopting a Postgres? They're not adopting because of software do not support Postgres, or DBA not trained on Postgres, or contractual obligation, or compliances, and etc. So I'd like to start the poll and understand what are the most challenges for adopting Postgres. Just give it maybe a few seconds on that. Again, Sophie, I cannot see the poll. If you don't mind to read it through and share what the results are.
Sure. The question, what are the most challenges of adopting Postgres?
Yeah, what are the results?
So the result, I'm just ending now. Software don't support Postgres, 13%.
Yep.
DBAs not trained on Postgres, 52%. Contractual obligation, 13%. Compliance risk, 22%.
Okay, so we're seeing that,
Yeah, if you can leave it there, Sophie, I'd like to, go further in this one and maybe answer what I think are a few underlying questions under there. So software do not support Postgres. You know, we need to go into detail of that, but I re-say, we EDB have the ability to give compatible application that run on Oracle without rewriting one line of code to run on our Postgres. It's not true for every software, but that's one part of the answer. DBA not trained, I agree. You know, and we have some capabilities to help train DBAs, and I agree. And training DBA doesn't have only an impact in adopting Postgres, but it's also giving people the ability to innovate and have new ideas. And you know, there's a lot of people who train DBAs. We do, and others do, and so we can help with that. Contractual obligation. You know, I know some companies are very, I would say, specialized at making sure they lock people in contract. And when you look at contract, I want to mention a number of things. You know, customers are running out of vendor locking. They don't want to be locked with a vendor. But the next thing is, you don't want to be vendor. You don't want to be locked with a cloud, right? Because whether you're locked with a vendor because of the software, or you're locked in one cloud and you can't get off that cloud, is actually the same problem. And you know, that's something also we can help with. Manage your contractual obligation and make sure we give you a path. And compliance, I don't know if it can help, but for example, encryption at rest was one big thing. We have a lot of customers that need encryption at rest. You know, those are things we can talk about. And help you, but I recognize those are some of the challenges.
So in fact, with that, we have a question from Dimitra. He says, majority of the management argue against open source software is that they don't have anyone who they can address problems. How can we fight with this?
Well, you know, the first thing we can do is build business justification that's going to help you address those objections. And you know, we have a number of cases and story that can help show people that think with, you know, budget and money, that open source actually is lower risk for them, and also less budget capture for them. And that's how I think we can find this, Dimitra. I think it's by having the conversation and showing, you know, people the art of the possible and the tangible benefits of Postgres, not only from a pure technical perspective, but also from a business perspective.
Yeah, and he thinks that the majority issue is to avoid responsibility. I agree. And I think this is also a good transition to the next topic. Why EDB? Why us, right? It's about responsibility, right? Why do they come to us? Or why should we, you know, the customer work with us?
Yeah, so that's a question for me, Kevin.
This is a question for you, because it's also attached. So people say, well, open source, who's going to support me, right? So I think a lot of customers looking open source is in the cloud, in the internet, but they're looking for strategic partnership, who we can, you know, who they can trust, who they can do many things, right? So I think it would be great from your perspective. Why is it EDB?
Yeah. So, you know, we can look at the history of others in open source. You know, the most obvious one is Red Hat, right? So when Red Hat started, you know, and people were saying, how the hell I'm going to put my most important thing, which is my operating system, on open source? You know, I've been running with either Windows or Unix and all those things. How the hell I'm going to put, you know, but they did it. And you know, there was such an impact, especially for the beginning in the financial sector, by people moving from, you know, either Windows or Solaris or those things to Red Hat, that they did it. But they did it under one umbrella. They did it because there was one company behind Red Hat, behind the open source, who was able, A, to fix problem, to give answers to questions, to train people, and to give line of sight in terms of roadmap, and do all the things that company needs to know before they invest. And I think we are, you know, we are the most, I would say, involved, if not engaged, company in the Postgres story, right? We have a lot of people who write code in Postgres.
Yeah.
And we have obviously, ideas on where Postgres should go, and we're talking to the community about it. So I think having a partner like us is a good, A, insurance policy, but B, business partner in order to make sure that we're critical business ready, and we are.
So on that note, they're great with these capability from us, but what can you explain to us? What are the acceleration strategy? What is the value driver for our customer to adopt Postgres open source? Can you maybe spend a couple of minutes talking about this?
Yeah, when we talk about value drivers, that it means at the end of the day, what's the value for a company of taking Postgres? And when we talk about value, it's not, I've saved 10% of my budget. When you talk of value, is what is the impact for the company? When you look at company, they're trying to increase market share, they're trying to increase profit, they're trying to go to new territories, they try to increase their shareholder value. Those are the things that matter. How do we contribute to that? And I think there's a number of things we can impact. The first one, which is linked to business continuity, which I call customer experience and customer satisfaction, right? If you're a company, if you're a bank, and if you don't deliver online, because most of what happens with a bank now is online, if you don't deliver a great customer experience, then people are going to leave your bank. Imagine you're on your bank and you have, it's slow and it's not new and it doesn't work with your last release of Android or iOS, and you can't make, I would say, live transfers, and or you have to wait 3 days before they register a new IBAN, so you make a transfer and all those things, then you're going to lose your customers because it's an open market. Now, if you're in an environment where your system is fast, you have continuity of service, people can innovate and add new application, then you're going to win customers, right? So that's one value driver, what I call customer experience. Then if you look at, risk mitigation, we talked about it when we say, is it a risk to go to Postgres? It's not, because you have way more experts and people who know about this thing, and the code is open, and if there's any security flaw and it's reviewed, I think a feature is reviewed by many persons before it gets into the product than in any other commercial software. Before a feature gets into the code, you have a lot of eyes on it, and that's also a really good way to do risk mitigation because of the quality of the software. Of course, cost savings, we talked about cost savings, and I explained how we free up, running cost budget and move that budget to innovation and predictability of revenue, but then attract talent. That's the main thing. Every time I talk with my customer, making sure they can have those guys that come from different backgrounds come and add value to the enterprise. I can quote one of my customers told me, it's not going to be the same guy who's been working for me for the past 20 years that's going to have a new idea. And the only way I'm going to attract a new guy from a new country or a new place is because I have that environment to offer him. And then we talked about deployment choice, runs anywhere, cloud, hybrid, Kubernetes, all those things. Those are things that we align the software to make sure we can provide that value to customers.
Yeah, that's great. So think about all these drivers and value adds and talking about EDB. You mentioned about it. If you want to talk about EDB, differentiate other open source vendor, how does EDB differentiate to other open source Postgres vendors out there? What is our value add?
Well, I think first, Kevin, is the magnitude of our engagement, right? We're almost 1,000 people company now, and our commitment is Postgres and Postgres only. This is the only thing we do, and we're 100% committed behind Postgres. we've been for the past 15 years, so it's not something new for us. We have, you know, a lot of extremely talented experts who are working for EDB, or we are providing consultancy to EDB for Postgres. As you write here, you know, we write a good chunk of the code. That's why, by the way, when we go back to quality of service, you know, there's very few companies that offer support contract with resolution SLAs. There's a lot of companies that offer support contract with, you know, they acknowledge the problem, they work on it, but resolving the problem within an SLA, there's very few companies that do that. We do that. And the reason we do that is because actually we do understand exactly what's in the code and we can fix what's in the code. We are a global company, you know, we have Asia and Asia Pacific and EMEA and the US who are similar in terms of weight. So for our global customer, it's really important to know that we have people all around the globe who are able to support us, to support them. You know, and you said it, like dedicated Postgres engineer, this is on the only thing we do, and we do it well. And then a lot of the core team members are part of EDB. So there's no. If you have to associate one name with Postgres of a company, you know, it's us.
Yeah. Okay, great. And we do have a question from the audience. Sergio asked, do we have enterprise tools that EDB can offer, like monitoring, HA, high availability tools, or Kubernetes operator? Yeah. So do you want to take it? I can also take this question too.
Yeah, I can't take it.
Okay,
well,
so
I think it's Ed or you who can.
Yeah, so I think I can take it. So we do have an enterprise tool. I mean, you can imagine that when you run Postgres, it's not just one database. You have tens, maybe hundreds of databases. So we do provide a management tool to manage all your enterprise-grade Postgres, mission critical, whether it's clustering, whether multiple machines or multiple data center, we have the tooling to manage it. Not only that, we also move it to the innovation with Kubernetes. So we actually recently announced a Kubernetes operator to the open source, meaning that we build it, but we donate it back, all the operator Kubernetes for Postgres into the open source community. And we have some materials about that. The idea is we are committed to open source. We want to make open source free to many people to contribute. So you as a customer or developer can contribute to this Postgres Kubernetes operator. And this is something that really scaling up, and we see big customers going to the Kubernetes, not only for the development CI/CD, but also for manageability and as well as deployment on site, in the cloud, hybrid, and all that stuff. So I think definitely we do have that innovation and a commitment to the open source.
And may I add something to that as well, Kevin, because we're also talking about Postgres running in a mission critical environment, to also offer tooling to enable running Postgres in mission critical environments, like for example, setting up a standby server or replication, etc. So also in that arena, we also offer tools to help you run Postgres applications in mission critical environments.
Yeah, you're right, Ed. And I think it goes back to the question of Dimitar, right? So Dimitar was saying sometimes we don't choose, customers don't choose open source because they're afraid of responsibility. Well, actually, if you talk about mission critical, we are better than the others in offering guarantees of SLAs. And just to give you an example, I'm not very technical, but we're able, for example, to provide 5.9 availability because we can avoid hardware maintenance by the way we run the cluster and managing the maintenance without impacting the SLAs. So I think you look at companies like EDB, we can help, Dimitar reassure the commitment and the responsibility and the availability in many cases better than usual commercial software.
Yeah. So regarding commercial software, Tom has a very interesting question from the audience. Tom asked, is there ever a concern that PostgreSQL for example, would turn from open source to commercial down the line. It's like flipping. So do you see that?
You know, when you look at Ed, our CEO, when you look the rest of the company, I don't see that happening, because that would be the end. You know, that would be the end of the company. And anyone who, so first, there's no one in EDB that's even thinking about that. You know, and I think that you know, no.
Yeah, I don't think so too, because
no, we are
first,
Kevin, we are people who are offering, you know, choice. We're offering choice of platform. We're offering choice of platform in terms of OS. We're offering choice of platform in terms of cloud. We're writing software that goes in the community for free. Yes, we do write some software that are need to be bought, like the mission critical software, the management software, but they are not mandatory. But no, that's absolutely not the DNA of the company. The company is 100% committed to the open source strategy.
That's great. So I hope that answered your question, Tom. So let's talk about customer use cases. So we have a lot of customers, right? I think 1,400 at the moment, and still growing. You can see all the customer success stories there. And yeah, so we do have a lot of those use cases. So should I talk about a couple of cases, Hervé?
Yeah, just before that, we have a question, Kevin, on one would ask, how do you define the GTM strategy with hyperscaler like AWS, Azure, and GCP? So maybe I can take this one.
Yep.
If you choose to go with one of the hyperscaler, you know, let's say you go with RDS, right? You're already locking yourself. There's no way you can get out, right? So we, EDB, we already offered, and we've proven that, freedom of choice from an OS perspective from the beginning. And if we want to offer our customer freedom of choice from a cloud vendor perspective, we want them to be able to align where they're going to put their workload based on their business requirements, based on their compliance requirements. I was with a customer 3 months ago, and he was exposing his strategy, and he was saying, we're going to move from 8 data centers to 12. And I looked at him and said, 8 to 12, why is that? You know, all the customer I meet, they're going from 20 to 5, so you're going to 8 to 12, what's going on? And say, well, considering the recent events in Europe, we want to make sure that every country we do operate has its own resilience program and can operate independently, right? So we want to make sure we can move those workloads, maybe even on-prem, because some of the cloud vendors, whether they are the global ones, won't be a safe place anymore. So the ability to move the workloads from one vendor to the other, or even from one vendor to your premise, is a critical requirement of business now, right? And so the answer to your question is, how do we position? We want to give freedom of choice and agility to our customers, and that's part of the value we deliver. And going to one vendor with one flavor, with one proprietary flavor of that vendor, cloud vendor, is the best way to lock yourself in, so you can't get out anymore.
Yeah, cloud. They got a cloud login right nowadays.
Exactly.
You go into the cloud AWS. You can't run RDS any other platform. You can only run on AWS. Same thing with Microsoft Azure. You can only run on Azure. And same thing with Google Cloud.
Yeah.
That's great. So yeah, there are some evidence as well. So we prepare some use cases which are reflecting to those benefits and drivers that you talked about, Hervé. So the first example I picked up one is quite recently. In fact, it's a recent customer, London & Partners. London & Partners is the driving force for their visitlondon.com. So any visitors wanted to book a restaurant, look in the event. So they have a lot of things going on with the Brexit, about entering to the country, going to the restaurant, booking hotel, all the stuff. They go to visitlondon.com. they can search for it. And the challenge for that is it has to be 100% online. So it cannot go down. So high availability is extreme. And also with the recent changes, one of their in-house database architect left the company. So they don't have a lot of resource available to look after the database, which is huge impact. And meanwhile, they have a challenge that they want to upgrade from a very old version from Postgres, and not only one, but several of them, different version to the latest version of Postgres. And not only the upgrade, but they want to move it to the cloud as well. So this is an upgrade and migration to the cloud in one go. So when we discuss with the customer, so we provided professional services to help them to upgrade, but not only that, but also move it to the cloud with our expertise, with professional services, and because they left a DBA, we actually added a remote DBA person, which is managing their environment remotely, is part of our service, so that it will ease off their resources, so they don't have to allocate or extra costs and extra headcount from internal to manage their database. We can do that remotely, and that really eliminating a lot of stress and maintenance. And because the DBA keeps it always on, always performing well, and really supporting when it's a peak to 2 million visitors with a very complex search. You can imagine that with the recent event, you know, the Queen just passed away. You can imagine that many people are going to the website looking for hotels, looking for maybe a place to eat, place to stay and see what's going on in London. So it is one of the major things. An important part of that transition, we managed to help the customer to upgrade their latest version, but also move it to the Azure cloud without any disruption. You know, Hervé mentioned about it, changing something, you have to take some, you have to mitigate some risk. Business continuity is one of the biggest majority of stopping the migration or stopping the adoptions. So in order to support the business continuity, not just moving off, but keep on going, maintaining and managing the environment, which is a big thing for the customer. So in fact, they increase 20 to 30% of their website traffic by having this availability, what we call the customer experience, that increasing that. So it's a big win. So it's not just about money, it's about how much traffic is visiting this website is important to the company. So one of the quotes actually from the senior developer, because of remote DBA, every time there are some issues happening, and it has been so very quickly. And sometimes even so things gone wrong, they don't even know because it has been addressed through the remote DBA instantly. So they don't have to worry and maintain or stress about some of these changes, some of these problems with a deep database. So this is one of the great things about working with a partner like EDB, providing the know-how, providing the resource to support the customer. Okay, so meanwhile, we have
maybe
question.
We leave a little bit of time for questions, Kevin, because
so sorry, I cannot pronounce the name. Turichindarun, I think that's how. I apologize if I pronounced it incorrectly.
Well, you pronounce my name incorrectly usually, Kevin. So that's
I'm sorry. Yeah. So other than saving the license costs, what other driver to move away from Oracle database to Postgres? And does that Postgres give features like RAG, data guard, and multi-tenant, etc.? Do you want to answer that, or should I answer that?
I'll let you answer the features thing, but I'll talk about the first part of the question, which is why.
Yeah.
So, you know, IT and software is now a critical piece of the value chain of any company. You can't be a relevant company. You can't compete if you don't have a great software strategy. You know, you remember the word software is eating the world. You know, you can't. So then you decide, do you want to be working with old tools you can't build anything with? Or do you want to be working with a great tool set that allows you to build what your business needs in order to compete and win your business? So the driver, to answer you, is we're giving the companies the ability to invent the business of tomorrow and compete at the highest level, which they can't do with traditional tools. Now, back to you for some of the specifics, Kevin.
Yes, so when you talk about Oracle to Postgres, first of all, before we talk about migration and features comparison, we need to understand the customer. How do they use the Oracle database with the RAG, data guard, multi-tenancy? Do they really need the RAG for high availability, or is it performance, or is it for failover? So first of all, we need to understand how the customer use RAG and data guard. So when they say, yes, they need RAG and data guard for high availability, we do have it. We support a failover manager, which is what we call a standby. So when something goes wrong, we fail over to the standby database, but we also have what we call always on architecture. We call it Postgres distributed. So Postgres distributed is also syncing up all the nodes inside a data center using clustering mechanism, replication, etc. Like data guard, we have a replication to replicate from one node to another. But not only that, we can also replicating a data center from data center. Let's say I'm based in Amsterdam, I have a data center maybe in London. I can replicate that as a failover. So I can have a master and master, active, active. So if something goes wrong, it will automatically switch to London, London pick it up.
Plus, this
so there is no time.
allows us also to give, low latency in different areas of the world, because we're going to put servers where we consume those data in Asia, in the US, in London. So people will directly address their workloads to the closest server to make sure we reduce, the latency, again, giving great customer experience.
Yeah, I think the important part is to understand the business case, how they use the technology before we answer it. And to go back to those things, yes, we do have compatibility or very similar functions and features like RAG and data guard and the multi-tenancy as well. So you can do a different types of deployment to do that. And we have another question coming in. Is that mainly based on the PG logic and you use in high availability? Yes, so the PG logic is part of that mechanism, but we also have a very lower latency to replicate within the different nodes. So we don't actually.
The answer is then it's not mainly based on PG code.
No, it's not mainly based, but we also added some other features to it. That's why we have the active with our what we call it logical replications. So we're not purely using the PG logic, the engine from the open source, but we also have added some intelligence to it. And because one of the thing about database, you need to be synced up, because you can imagine you pay a payment. You pay in Amsterdam, suddenly it goes down. Do we know the payment has been committed or not? You don't want to commit it twice, which will upset the customer. And you also wanted to commit it too late, so you miss the amount. So database has to have some logic about committing to the transaction. And how does the other node knows that those transaction has been committed? So all in all, we take care of that the synchronization, not just the data, but also transaction processes.
So there's a question from an anonymous attendee. Maybe we are friends from Oracle who are coming to the webinar. But that's okay. We can still answer. So, what can Postgres do or EDB can't? And without going into technicalities, I think this is a very broad question. But I think at a high level, what we can do that Oracle can't is free up budget for innovation. We can do that. Oracle can't do that. Give an environment where a developer can strive and innovate. We can do that. Oracle can't do that anymore. And there's a couple of other things, but then we can talk about technicalities, but there's way too many of them. We can talk in a webinar, but
yeah, I think one of the things, that which is another use case I wanted to maybe very briefly talk about STC Pay in Saudi Arabia. They move away from SQL Server, and the reason for one of them for that is not just about lower cost, attracting talent to build a new team. This is something that Oracle cannot do. You know what? A lot of the school leavers, like university colleges, they come out with the IT background from open source, like Postgres. So in order to attract their team, they need to move that environment from some of the legacy databases to innovation like open source to attract new talents. So this is one of the goals, to move some of the innovation, not just for the sake of the IT, but also continuity to develop and innovate their solution and product and attracting new talent in order to build that and accelerate that modernization and adoptions. I think this is also very important to many of you and many customers that we are engaging, is to how do they build that innovation by leveraging some of the innovation coming out from schools and in the market to help them to build the next generation of the solutions. So I think
you have another question, Kevin. You have another question. We have a lot of interest today.
Yeah, cool.
Peter wants to know if we can also help from old Postgres to new Postgres.
Absolutely. Minimum downtime. That's what I show with this London and partners. So we actually upgraded from 9 to Postgres 12 with a very minimum downtime, because we have a failover. We call it a rolling upgrade process. So definitely, if you, Peter, please reach out to me, and I will point you to the right team, and we can discuss about this migration or upgrade from Postgres 8 to whatever version you think is appropriate, whether 12, 13, or 14. So definitely we can do that, Peter.
And I think for the question of Sig Tigur, I mean, someone needs to call him. I don't even understand the question, Kevin. It's way too sophisticated for me.
Okay. For the discussion, how the payment has been committed or not. Does that mean that you have synchronized commit? So it's not synchronized commit. It's also when they commit. So we understand that there is a commit of what we call a shadow understanding. Oh, actually as commit. So when I bring up the server back, I know I can sync up all the commit that already been done. So I don't have to do that again. So when I bring it back up a standby or the database down, then I can understand what are the transaction history and logs. I can sync up. I don't have to deal with things when they bring it back up from all these transactions. The other servers know what the states are, so that they don't have to commit again. So this is something we can talk about with our distributed high availability architecture with you. So, happy to have a call with you if you are interested to go a deeper dive about those commit. How does the synchronization work? The commit, transactions, shutdown, and the sequence. When you bring it down and when you bring it up, what are the sequence? What are the things that you need to do? What are the application you need to understand? Where it is, what state they are in, what is the latest version of your transaction and all that. Maybe some transaction is done.
Yeah, I think, look, we're getting at the end of the time. I'm happy we have interest and some very precise questions. So I think Sophie and Alice, like, we're running out of time, right? But I'd like to offer people who have more questions to come to us, and maybe Alice or Sophie in the follow-up email, give them an email address or maybe even a phone number where people can call and ask those follow-up questions. And if you have any business questions or business relevance questions, I'm happy to take them and engage conversation. Kevin, Kevin, I want to thank you for inviting me
No,
the show.
I'm delighted. I'm honored to have you on the. We should do more often, Hervé.
I hope, this was not a technical webinar. I hope you guys on the call got value of what you saw, and I want to thank the team for organizing it.
Yeah, thank you. But before we close the webinar, we did say we're going to award the best question in the session. So talking to the team at the background, we have selected the winner. So today's winner is Dimitri Dimitrov. So Dimitri, we will contact you. We have your email address. We will send you the €25 gift card. So I appreciate everyone's attention, participation, all the great questions you are sharing with us. So looking forward to the next Ask the Expert. So meanwhile, have a great day. Wish you all a fantastic day. Thank you all again. Thank you, team, for all your support, and speak to you all soon. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.